Hi everyone, welcome to the Hunyuan Academy Heart Track. This class we're recording now is an introduction class for everyone who is interested to learn about the Hunyuan Heart. The Hunyuan Academy is an online school. We have in the Heart Track 12 different courses starting from January 2018. And we have two other tracks about medicine and about body called Hunyuan Body Track and Hunyuan Medicine Track. So I want to introduce today the Hunyuan Heart Track. As said, we have 12 courses planned as of yet. Some of the classes are pre-recorded, like the class you are watching now. Other classes are live. Some courses have all the classes live, like the Lunyu meditations that we're doing throughout the year. And there is one course that is entirely recorded without live classes. You can see it on our website, hunyuanacademy.com. You can find all the details. So I want to introduce what the Hunyuan Heart is, and what I want to use in order to start my introduction to the Hunyuan Heart is a meeting that occurred in China during the Song Dynasty about 900 years ago. Is called the Goose Lake Temple Debate. Now, throughout the Chinese history, there were high rise and low tides of different religions, including the three main religions, Confucianism, Buddhism, and Taoism. And prior to the Song Dynasty, during the Tang Dynasty, there was a rise of Buddhism. Now, when we get to this era of the Song Dynasty, about 1,000 years ago, there was a surge of Confucianism, also called Neo-Confucianism. So during that time, there started to be a divergence in the thought of Confucianism. And the main two figures are the two figures that I bring here on this slide, Zhu Xi, who is a very, very famous master until today, and Lu Jiuyuan. The divergence between them, basically, I could sum up that Zhu Xi believed that investigating the exterior world will eventually lead us to know about ourselves and about our heart, whereas Lu Jiuyuan and some other claimed that the enlightenment comes from inside out. Now, to reconcile this difference between the two, one prominent scholar at the time invited the two to the Goose Lake Temple, and the year is 1175. And with these two people, or with these two scholars, came hundreds and hundreds of people, officials, their disciples, scholars from all over the country. So that was a pretty big event. And they started a 3-day debate. Is enlightenment from the inside the right thing, or investigating the outside world in order to reflect inside is the proper thing? And actually, in this Goose Lake Temple debate, they started the debate that lasted until today for the following 900 years. More so, Lu Jiuyuan, who believed in enlightenment comes from the inside. We look into our heart and gradually we start to find out what life is like, what's the purpose of this world. He was quite dominant at this time. I mean, his opinion was widely respected. But after the debate, and as the centuries went by, the institutions and the government adopted Zhu Xi approach, that researching the phenomena in nature and therefore finding out what's the truth and then finding out about ourselves. This became more the orthodoxy, or what is accepted. And so everybody studied Zhu Xi, and he was elevated to a level of a sage, just like his predecessor much earlier on, Confucius and Mencius. And Lu Jiuyuan, shortly after his death, he was one of 6 brothers. Also, after his brother passed away, this understanding that enlightenment comes from the inside easily dissipated and was had very little following, until at least 200-300 years later, another scholar, Wang Yangming, picked up on it and started to revive it. And there was a trend and continuing in that thought, in that understanding that life, or understanding of life, comes from the inside out and not from the outside in. Uh, what we're doing in the Hunyuan Heart Track and the school that we belong to, and I will introduce it today, belong more so to Lu Yuan and his thinking and his understanding. That the more we reflect inwards, the more we start to find out what the proper measure is, what the right thing to do, how life is like, and on, many other things that we want to unfold throughout the different courses that we have in this track. And I want to introduce first just briefly what Lu Yuan said as far as the meaning of our heart and the world around us. So I'm bringing a quote here from Lu Yuan talking about the universe and the heart, and I've translated it is for us here. So Lu Yuan says, "The universe is my heart, and my heart is the universe." Meaning what's really inside of me and the real truth that happens in the world as far as life is concerned and the universe is one and the same. When in the East there is a sage, their heart is this heart, like this truth that is inside of me. Their underlying principle is this principle. When in the West there is a sage, their heart is this heart. Their underlying principle is this principle. Meaning any sage that's come, and specifically in his time, he's talking about in the East are like the authentic Chinese masters or ancient masters, Confucius and Lao Tzu. In the West, we're talking about the Buddha. As far as in China is concerned, India is to the west of them. So if the master is coming from here or from there, inside the heart, they're actually finding the same truth. He says, thousands generations ago and thousands generations later, when there is a sage, they all have this heart and this underlying principle. In other words, this truth that we have and that we can find inside our heart is universal, and it has no time constraint and no space constraint. It does not belong to Chinese or to Indian or to European or to American, but rather every human being inside has this truth that is attainable, and then finding out the meaning around us. Now this, of course, throughout history has been used in different ways. Some religions also look at it and say something to the extent that the heart is only imagining the world, or you perceive the world as what your heart is like. But this talks about something else than what we want to talk about today, meaning the perception of the external heart, we call it, how the world is like or what the reality is like. This is not what we are referring to. This is not what Lu is talking about. So Lu Yuan, who is someone that I studied extensively, and we, studying the Hunyuan Heart Track, belong to this school. He is the founder of the Huaishan school. The time era is about 2 centuries ago, and he is following in Lu Yuan's steps. Now Lu Yuan, even though he was in the Neo-Confucian era of the Song dynasty about 900 or 1000 years ago, he does not really belong per se to be a Confucian, because his attitude is that the truth inside the heart is universal. So he said, if you're a Buddha, or if you're a Taoist, or if you're a Confucian, or if you're Christian, or Jewish, or Muslim, or it doesn't matter what your religion is, the truth inside is one and the same. So in that respect, Lu Yuan, following in his steps, was also a kind of a master that synthesized the 3 religions available to him at the time in China, which are Buddhism, Taoism, and Confucianism, merging them into one universal truth, talking about enlightenment comes from the inside and not from external circumstances or from external understanding or from external rituals or divisiveness or belonging to a certain groups, which are all external applications of the heart and not really a universal truth that resides inside the heart. So I'm introducing Lu Yuan, who is a pivotal figure for us in the heart track, learning his literature and his methods, also how to go deeper and deeper into finding this truth. I want to bring briefly a couple of quotes from him, but first how he describes this finding the truth from the inside. How does it work? And Lu Yuan says, in order to rein in the heart, meaning the external heart, the desires, the selfish desires, wanting things or perceiving the world, these are all the external heart. It's not the real truth inside the heart. In order to rein in the heart, this external heart, There is nothing better than sitting in stillness, which is one of the methods that we will practice diligently throughout the heart track. Next to that, there is learning literature, or learning goodness literature. Literatures that talk to us or explain to us the meaning of finding the good heart inside and not being subjected to selfish desires that leads to then wrong or hurtful actions. These are called goodness literature. Literature speaks about how to find the true heart inside. And even writing, he says, or doing calligraphy or practicing something that is very external can also rein the heart. But this, the most external thing that we're doing, is the most superficial level. Now, if the most superficial level is beneficial, how beneficial is the sitting stillness, which is hitting it right heads on? This issue of finding the deepest parts of the heart is this sitting stillness that has many different applications and methods. We will learn and progress in them throughout the heart track. Therefore, Liu Yuan says, Master Lu Jiu Yuan, which I introduced at the beginning, taught that one should first sit in stillness and only thereafter research goodness literature. Meaning first find this inside the heart, the deep place inside the heart that resonates with the universe. And then also start working out the heart from the outside, reading literature about goodness, how to sort the heart, how to get better and better. So we do want to do both, but the starting point is from the inside out and not the other way around. Liu Yuan says, when compared to Master Zhu, this is the other master from the debate, Master Zhu Xi, right, the one that believes on the outside, learning from the outside, who taught that one must read books first and then sit still. In other words, first we need to find from the outside about nature, about the reality, being more scientific, so to speak. Learning about what's happening outside. How is nature happening? How is day and night? How is the weather? How is, things on the outside happening? And gradually it will start to teach us about the heart. Liu Yuan says, right, Master Zhu, who taught that way, to start books first and then sit in stillness. He says, in comparison, Lu, the other master, Lu Jiu Yuan, had many more accomplished students. Meaning Lu's styles, reaching to the good heart inside, has much more success, and Liu Yuan belongs to that school, as are we. Liu Yuan continues to talk about this stillness or preserving stillness. He says, upon preserving stillness, we'll talk about it later in the class today, upon preserving stillness, one can start inspecting movement. These are the two things we will learn throughout the course. One is how to preserve, go inside and inside to find that truth. And the other is how to inspect the external heart movement. Inspecting the movement means my desires, what I want, how this external heart movement pulls me in different directions. And in this department also belongs to learning the goodness literature. From the outside, I learn about the heart movements and desires and things like that. But he says, Liu Yuan, upon first preserving stillness, finding this center inside, finding this stillness inside, that I'm able actually to correctly inspect the movement, start realizing what the heart is doing and wants. As far as getting close to the true meaning, and when we compare the two masters, right, these two from the debates 900 years ago, Lu's teaching, Lu Jiu Yuan's teaching, is closer to Tao, meaning it's closer to the real truth, to the real principle, because, and this is most important for us, it allows people to easily advance. Instead of having a very slow progress, if at all, this other method of starting on the inside first allows us quite rapid progress, and this is what we're looking for. Now in the Hunyuan Heart, we have these two aspects of learning in the Hunyuan Heart Track. One is to learn different techniques to go deeper and deeper. We have courses dedicated to that, like the Lunyu meditation courses, the Wu Jigong, and other aspects that we're doing related to reflecting inward and finding center. The other is to start learning and dig deeper into the literature, the goodness literature, to work the heart from the outside, just the way we explained before. So one of the courses, we incorporate 3 different texts from the Huaishan school, from Liu Yuan, talking about the heart. And in this course, in that particular course, that is value 4 credits. All the different courses, depending on their length and depth, are awarded different number of credits. This course awards 4 credits, and we have 8 recorded classes and 4 live classes. We cover 3 different texts: the long, arduous way of learning the simple things, Yu Cheng Tang family precepts, and learning the sage's capacity for forgiveness. These 3 are our most interesting texts from the Huaishan school. The first one, just to mention the names of the first text, the Xia Xue Di Hang, the long, arduous way of learning the simple things, or in short, we just say learning the simple things, talks about things that are very common and that we do all the time and we don't think of, like relationships that we have and are always surrounding us, like being a father, being a husband or a wife, being a child, meaning I have to have a certain relationship to a parent, or being a friend. Talk about things that are very common that we ignore, almost like breathing. We ignore breathing. We always do it. It's automatic, so we don't think about it. But actually, in the ancient Confucian texts, it says this xiaxue, this seemingly very simple learning. Learn of the things that are very simple. They're always there. Normally, I ignore them. They're just there by default. When we learn them and deep go into them, finding actually within my heart, within the deepest recesses of the heart, why it works, how it works, this then, even though it's so simple and so common, help us reach to the highest realm. This is from, again, from the one ancient Confucian texts. So this is the name of the text, talking about these things that are very common and very simple, and yet when we dig deep into them, we get to a very, very high level. Likewise, with the Yu Cheng Tang family precepts, Yu Cheng Tang is another name for Liu Yuan's home. That's how it used to be called. And learning the sage's capacity for forgiveness talks about the 5 different hearts of the sage, the compassionate hearts, the wide, generous hearts, etc. And all these texts we cover throughout the course. But now in this introductory class, I just want to bring a little 2 snippets from the class 1 and class 2. The recorded classes, we call them CC or curriculum class, and the live classes, we call them RD classes or review and discussion classes. So from the first two recorded classes, I want to bring one, the preface and introductions to the first text, the simple things, and then from the second classes, we jump deeper into that text, into a more practical way to learn about sitting, stillness, and be able to practice. And then from a different course in the Hunyuan track, the Shinfa course, I bring the practical method of the Shinfa meditation, something that even if we just started by watching this introductory class, we already have something that we can take home and start practicing, which is extremely useful. So I want to start first with the preface introduction to the simple things text, right? The long, arduous way of learning the simple things that I mentioned before. So in this preface, Liu Yuan introduced what he wants to talk about, what he wants to teach. So he starts by saying, Tao is like a path. The word Tao in Chinese means a road or a way. So he said the way is like a path. It basically contains this one meaning. So when we speak about the Tao, it means we actually have a way to go to, through, or to walk on. This is what it means to have a Tao. It's not something obscure or mysterious, but rather it's a path. We have a path. He says heaven, earth, human beings, and spirits, they all have it, and therefore it is called Tao. They all have this path that when we are, and what we mentioned before, when we look deep inside the heart, we find better and better what is this path that we need to tread. The word Tao means a road, and here road and path are synonyms. The difference between a human being and other creatures is minute. This idea comes from one of the ancient sages, from Mencius, who speaks about it. So Liu Yuan borrows from Mencius and says it's a very slight difference. Like human being is just like any other living things in the world, but the difference, there is a difference. It's very, very small. We are not very different than animals and creatures and trees or anything that is alive. We are very much alike. But there is a very, very slight difference. And this slight difference is called heaven's nature, or a concept called heaven's nature. I translate it into heaven's nature. Nothing else. When one fully embodies this heaven's nature, then one is a human being. Otherwise, one is something other than human. Meaning we're still alive, we're like all the animals, but we are not. We don't have that one very specific quality. This very slight difference. Those who fortify this very small difference, the very minute difference, are sages. These are what we call a sage. Just this little thing that is there, this heaven's nature, the ones that strengthen it, embolden it. These are what we call sages. Thus, sages are those who embody this thing that make people humans, and this is it. Just explaining, I'm sidetracking here for a second. At his time in the Qing dynasty in Sichuan and in China in general, speaking about a sage becomes like, a very religious thing. So you speak about Confucius, about Lao Tzu, everybody's focused about religious rituals, and they think that sages are something very elevated, very far out there. So Liu Yuan, just like Lu Ju Yuan before him, had a very different perspective. It's like the sagehood is inside the person, is that slight, tiny little thing that the ancient philosopher Mencius is speaking of. Is everybody has this sage in them. So Liu Yuan here, at his stance, what he's explaining is this is what we're after. It's deep inside. It's not lofty. It's not out there. So Liu Yuan continues. He says, he brings a quote from the ancient sage Confucius, like 2,500 years before our time. Confucius says, a human being is the heart of heaven and earth. Meaning the heart of heaven and earth is a human being. Everybody has it within him. And Confucius also said, accomplishment derived through difficulties or perseverance is one and the same. Of course, Liu Yuan talks to his peers at his time. Everybody are aware of the full quotes in the Confucian text. For our viewers here, maybe we're not aware of it. So I'm just sidetracking to explain this second quote. Talk about different levels of knowing. The highest levels, Confucius says, it's deep inside, is intuitive. A person is born with it. He knows this life. He knows this true nature inside. But then it's the heart, the external heart, kind of take it away from us or obscures it. We can't see it anymore. We start losing this. We start losing this intuitive knowledge inside, and we start knowing other things, and our perception of the reality becomes different. So he says the second level of knowing and the third level of knowing is when I try to learn hard, like I sit in meditation, like Liu Yuan speaks of and Lu Ju Yuan before explained, right? I sit in meditation or I research goodness literature. I start to work my heart, and after great labor, I at the end also get to that same intuitive knowledge that some people have, but most people don't. But through working at it, you also get to that place inside. So Confucius here explained in this quote that if I have it intuitively, or if I work really, really hard at it, meditating and read proper literature to find my heart inside, at the end is one and the same. We get to the same place. So it's as good. It's not just if I know it, if I'm that one sage like Buddha, then only I'm the one who benefits from it. But rather Confucius said, everyone that go to this place, it's the same knowledge at the end. We reach to the same place. So Liu Yuan again quotes Confucius, highlight this point. Mencius, the follower of Confucius, the number 2 sage in Confucianism, and for us in the Huaishuan, again, these are not sages over there, but rather people that found that thing inside, that we all can find the same place. Mencius says, all people can become like Yao and Shun. Yao and Shun are 2 legendary rulers from very ancient, remote times that Confucius, before Mencius, was considered to have ultimate virtue. Like they were really pure in that sense. And as rulers, they never thought of themselves. They only thought to serve the people. When their time came and they had to give the throne to other people, to someone else to follow them, they didn't do it for selfish reasons. They didn't look for, because it's their son, to give it to their offspring or any other selfish reason. They simply found the center inside, and they found the proper person to hand the throne to. These were examples in the eyes of Confucius of pure virtue, of selflessness. So Mencius says, all people can become like Yaron Shun. It's in all of us. It's not that they were great sages at the time, great rulers from 4,000 or 5,000 years ago, and we cannot. He says everybody can be like this. There was never a time when Tao meant selecting individuals, and this refers to the second thing that I mentioned before, that the finding the next ruler for Yao and Shun was something that was spontaneously finding the good thing and not really select what they selfishly wanted. This is what this quote means. Thus, Liu Yuan says, virtue of sages is also the constant affair of any living person. Really, now in this book that Liu Yuan writes the preface to, the simple thing, learning the simple things, this is where the virtue of the sages are, and it belongs to everybody. We are all surrounded by learning the simple things about my relationship with my parents, with my husband or wife, with my children, with my neighbors, friends, teachers, patients. Right? This is the virtue of the sages. It's actually the constant affair of everybody. We're all finding the same place for the same reason. He says, for example, the old fisherman of the pond stream or the brick worker building a wall. These are also ancient stories. The stories themselves are not so important right now. But talking about regular people that still found in their heart to do the right thing, the proper thing. He says, even though they are simpletons or regular people, they are not the rulers, not even like Yao and Shun, not like the legendary rulers. How are they not sages and saints? Asked Liu Yuan in a rhetoric question. Meaning they're all looking for the same place. They all want to do the proper thing and they can reach the same elevated level. Earlier people, says Liu Yuan, mistook the instruction of great virtue. They did not dare to become sages. In other words, sages is something that is very far and high. It's like very special. You have to be a very special entity to become a sage. It's not us. We can just learn, follow them, copy them, but we cannot be ourselves. He says, but instead, right, this learning the great virtue, they did not dare to say, I'm a sage or want to become a sage, but rather they only felt content when they degraded themselves as inferior. They said the sage, like Confucius or the Buddha, they were like really big, but I'm only an irregular person, I'm worth nothing. But Liu Yuan points out this is a mistake. This is not really how things work. In reality, he says, a sage is a person who has reached far with human relations, meaning he knows how to be a good husband, a good wife, a good parent, a good child, a good friend, a good teacher, a good doctor, meaning any kind of relationship that we have that makes this heart connect. A sage is one that knows how to do it really well. All people during their lifetime cannot escape the 5 kinships, this same thing that the sage actually became a sage for. How could it be that a sage will learn to strengthen human ties without a teacher? This, again, in his time, 2 centuries ago, most people worshipping the sages, it doesn't matter if it's Buddha or if it's Confucius or if it's Lao Tzu, they all roll out stories like Confucius received his truth, his infinite truth from heaven, from the sky, like it fell on him from the sky. It cannot be that there was another person teaching him, because he is like he's a sage, there's nobody can teach him. This was at Liu Yuan's time and also throughout centuries before the common prevailing understanding of people what a sage is. And he says it's all about human relations. It's all about learning how to go deeper in the heart. So he makes here a critique, Liu Yuan says. How could it be that a sage, Confucius or Buddha, or whoever it may be, will learn how to strengthen the human ties, but without a teacher, like it will fall on him from the sky? So here, in our heart track, we do learn that to find enlightenment does come from the inside, and we work on it to find the truth from the inside. Lu Yuan, 7 centuries before him, before Liu Yuan, right, the one guy from the debates, from the famous debate in the Goose Lake Temple, he says the enlightenment comes from the inside. But this here, Liu Yuan counter the regular notion that the sage is like a godly thing, it falls from heaven. He says these are people, and they have teachers, they learn from people. In different places, Confucius says, when you see three people, if they argue, if they support each other, if they do, amongst them, one of them has to be my teacher, which means the one that does good, I constantly copy them or try to learn how come they're so good. The other one who does bad, constantly I learn what not to do. These are also called teachers. It doesn't have to be someone in an official position, I am teaching you. But rather, wherever you look, you learn. We're learning from the goodness of other people, and from the badness of other people, we also learn not to do. So going back to Liu Yuan, he says, today to be sagely is high and lofty. In every measure it is modernized. It's not like the real meaning. It is viewed as being esteemed under heaven, like to be a sage is someone that came from the cloud. A sage is portrayed unlike regular person, and because of this, Liu Yuan says, one is afraid to self-cultivate. One is afraid to become like this good, and is left content with having no progress. Meaning I'm mediocre, sometimes I'm bad, because I'm a regular person. The sage is the sage. They are the ones that always are expressing goodness and do special things. I'm doing some good, I'm doing some bad. I'm a regular person. Liu Yuan criticized this mediocre approach. I'm just a person, I'm not a saint. Liu Yuan says this is not how it works. Reflecting, going deeper and deeper, we find the sage. Everybody has it in it. He says, continue his critique, those many who speak of a sage, quote unquote, miss the mark by thinking that it is too far and lofty. They do not realize that between a sage and an ordinary person there is no difference, except that the former, the sage, acts in accord with the principle of the common center. The common center is the name of an ancient text that we will also work very thoroughly through in the Heart Track, called the Zhongyong in Chinese, the common center. And it basically talks about this thing that is deep inside of us, but expresses itself in a very common daily affairs, like the relationships, like just dealing with people around me, family member or friends or otherwise, patients or students or whatever it is. You deal with them on a regular basis, and it becomes something that we don't think about. And yet, if we research it deeper and deeper into our heart to find how it is more and more proper, more and more centered, then we reach something that is very, very special. So here he says, the sage is simply a person that follows this principle of the common center. This thing that is very common, very simple, and yet you can find something that is very, very deep and unique there. The Tao of the common center, this principle of the common center, is ordinary but also extraordinary, just the way I explained before. It's a daily affair. We always do it with people around us. And yet when we go deeper into it, when we sink deeper into our heart, we find something that is very extraordinary on few different levels. And we will explore it and practice it and develop it throughout the Heart Track. And since its extraordinary aspect reveals itself within the ordinary, that's why the title of that book is The Common Center, or the Zhongyong. Liu Yuan concludes his preface. He says, I'm already old, and it is difficult for me to answer to all the people who come to the house asking for guidance. At his time, 200 years ago, his school was very, very popular, had thousands of students and people flocking in from all over China to learn the secrets of the heart. I therefore instruct my sons, Songwen, Yiwen, he had 8 sons, these are names of 2 of them, to jot down my humble viewpoint and pass it on to those who come asking for instructions. The explanations transmitted are in one family and the viewpoint of a man declining in years. I am reluctant to somehow replace the words of the master with those of a grass and firewood gatherer, meaning I'm commenting on Confucius and Mencius and these sages before me, and I'm, very humble to do that. I'm just a firewood gatherer, or grass and firewood. I'm just like a regular person, nothing special about me. Knowing my intention and forgiving my errors, then it is very fortunate indeed for me. So if people know that I'm not out of arrogance, just try to tell everyone how I know better, but rather I want to share with people. And if I have mistakes, it's my fault, and I hope everyone forgive me, then I really have good luck. Written by Liu Yuan at age 83, 5 years before he passed in Shuangyu County, the 30th year of Daguang era, which is 1850. So now, after we finished just the introduction to the simple things text, throughout in the course, of course, we'll go through the entire text and try to find many different things unfolding there. I want to jump to a little piece from the second class about, also from the simple things from the same text, about self-reflection. So first, before I quote from that book, I want to bring a quote from the Common Center, that text that I mentioned, just so we'll be aware of what Liu Yuan says will make sense to us. At this time when he speaks, he knows people who learn his text are very well aware of the Confucian text and other classics. But here for my audience, I just bring a little extra side quote so we know what he's referring to. So in that Common Center, the Common Center itself cites a different, more ancient quote, a more ancient book called the Book of Poetry. So from more remote times, the Common Center itself is a 2,400 years old text, but the Book of Poetry maybe a few hundred years earlier. So we see that quote. It says in the Book of Poetry, the ancient Book of Poetry, it says, even though the fish submerges and hides at the bottom of the pond, it is still seen clearly. The meaning of that ancient quote is that even though the fish is very deep there at the bottom, it's still there. And upon closely inspecting it, one can still see it at the bottom, even though it's hiding at the bottom very far. So the Zhongyong, the Common Center, that text, continue on that ancient quote, and it says, the nobleman, the one that finds that truth inside, tirelessly self-inspects, and therefore has no repulsiveness in his heart, has no evil, has no bad thing coming out, or things that detract from life and ruin life. It's all about promoting life. This is called, has no repulsiveness. This place, where the nobleman has no match, meaning that deep place inside, not on the outside, very deep inside, is a place that others cannot see. As if like that fish that is deep inside, like normally you would not see it, but upon careful inspection you will see that the fish is deep in there. So it says that the difference between nobleman and a regular person is in that very deep place that people normally don't look or don't see. It's not in their actions outside, it's not how they pretend to be or what they want to look like, but it's a very, very deep place. So now we're going to that chapter in the simple things, that text from the Huaishuan school, from Liu Yuan, and that chapter talks about preserving stillness, finding that quiet truth very deep inside. In this chapter, Liu Yuan says, when the heart floats to the surface, help it sink, and when it shows at the exterior, help it submerge. These two words, sink and submerge, are the two methods for reining in the heart. Every time when we say reining in the heart means the external movements of the heart, the desires and wants and needs. It differentiates between the true nature that is inside and is a different aspect of the same heart, but it resides deep. It's like the fish hiding at the bottom of the pond. Liu Yuan then quote the same quote that I brought before. He says, the Common Center says, even though the fish submerges and hides at the bottom, it is still seen clearly. In other words, it's very deep. No, people normally don't see it, but it is there. He continued to quote the same quote from before. The place where the nobleman has no match is a place that others cannot see. It's very deep. It's concealed. It is there, but it is deep. It's not on the outside manifestation. So how can people be careless with this secret they are unable to see, with this thing that is in there, but normally we don't see? How could people be careless with that? Now this chapter here talks about preserving stillness, or finding that place, going to that place. Liu Yuan says, when one purifies the most secret recesses of the heart, then knowing where it stops, and thereafter there is fixed space. He uses another quote from a different text, so I'll bring that quote too, so we'll know what he's talking about. This is another ancient text called the Great Learning, or the Da Xue, and there's just this one line that Liu Yuan now quotes in his text. And he says, knowing where it stops, and then there is fixed space. There is a fixed place, but I call it a fixed space. The space can be enlarged. The reason that I bring this is because I want us to learn some Shinfa meditation, and it is related to this preserving stillness and looking very deep into that fixed space that we can enlarge. But before I'm teaching this, before I'm explaining how to do this technique, which is very useful, I want to share with you a short story from 2 days ago about a patient. And this story will bring me why do we want to learn this meditation or this technique to find that fixed space. So I have a patient that has, and sometimes it happens like this, that people have many bad things happen to them on the emotional front. In other words, this patient is working in a place that the boss is very, very mean and abusive to her psychologically. And that taxes the heart. It takes a lot of energy because all day long we are with this boss, and the boss is very abusive every day, all day. And in addition to that, trying to get pregnant, and the IVF and the modern treatment didn't work with all the drugs and the aggravation, and it doesn't work, and there's difficulty to get pregnant. And in addition, there's some feud with a family member and court proceedings, fighting with some family members, and everything is ganging up on the person. And oftentimes it happens like this. Like, it's not that we have just one problem, but rather this doesn't work and this doesn't work. And everything is like sucking the life out of us. The energy comes out of the heart. I'm always worried, or people make me worried, or the boss abuses me, and it's more and more difficult. So it's this kind of a situation. So I talked to this patient and I said, look, we have to start working on finding that center. Just like Lu Yuan said, this enlightenment starts from the outside. And when the heart starts finding this center, this truth, this universal truth, what's right, what's wrong, what's proper, what's not proper, the energies from the outside start to attract into us differently. Different energies start to attract us. The more the exterior heart is pushing and pulling and fighting, the more things get really worse on different fronts. So we started working on it in different ways. One of it is the Shinfa meditation. The other is also heart sorting and other things. But we had that talk and we said, we need to find the center. We need to find inside this calmness, not look for other people to be good to us and through that solve our problem. Not look for the boss to try to be nicer or anything else. We need to look into ourselves to find that. We find this inside, how to be more and more proper. And this patient then went to do a job interview somewhere else, hoping to maybe find another job, because we need the money, we need the livelihood, but the situation at the work is terrible and other things are also bad. So we're talking like this maybe 2 weeks ago. So she went to do a job interview. And then last week we talked about it and we did some work inside the heart. And 2 days ago, the patient comes again. And this time, she doesn't come like normally. Normally she comes from work and she dressed nice and she's very stressed. And you can see it on her body and the energy and the heart. The heart is moving a lot, and what happened with the boss, what the boss did, and the heart just cannot take it. But this time, 2 days ago, the patient comes, she dressed differently with a sweatshirt, very loose clothes. She sit back, very relaxed, and she start by saying, guess what happened? And I look at her and I said, well, one thing for sure, you got the new job. And she's smiling. And she said, you know, the day after I left last week, the prior week, she's telling me, my husband calls me in the middle of work. He said, you have to come home right now. And she got worried. She said, what happened? Why do I have to come? He said, I just won 2 tickets for a baseball game and we are going now. So she's leaving work. They're going to see some baseball game of the New York Yankees. On the way to work, she gets a call from that workplace. And they said, we like you, we want you, you got the job. As they come home in the evening, this family feud that she had and court proceeding for a long, long time, that person is calling her husband. And he said, look, how about if we just try to finish this outside of court? Like there's a momentum, like he wants to finish it after a long, long time. And this whole thing is happening together. It's all happening at the same time. Now for the people who follow Jushi and that style of learning of things from the outside, remember we talked about this debate, the ones that we find from inside, the one that find from the outside. They will say, look, this is all coincidence. You did meditation, you did this, you worked your heart, it doesn't matter. But by a chance, you got the job because they like you. By a chance, your husband won tickets. By a chance, the person that fights with you for years in courts now said, you know what, let's try to settle. Let's just try to get on with our life. This Jushi style from the outside means it's not according to the regular things that we see. From the outside, you look at it, it does not make sense. It has to be a coincidence. Even if there were 10 more things happening together, it's still a coincidence. It has to be a coincidence. This is this learning the heart from the outside. You look at the outside, it can only be something, some random coincidence of sorts. If you look from the inside, like Lu Jueyuan, like his follower, Wang Yangming, like Liu Yuan in the Huai school, like here what we're doing in the Heart Track, trying to find the center, trying to find the simple things, how we do it really, really well, and then you start seeing how everything good start happening. By the simple things, finding the inside, you start seeing everything from the outside start to fall into place just right. For us, we say this is not a coincidence. For us, it starts from finding that place, that secret inside. And like Liu Yuan says, it starts not by searching on the outside with literature, but rather from finding on the inside where the center is, what's the proper thing is, how to find myself, this life in me, that then everything falls into place. All the stars align, everything happens on its own. So this Shinfa meditation that I want to introduce is to find that fixed space that I mentioned before, that Liu Yuan talks about, that the Da Shui, the very ancient text, the Great Learning, talks about. And this Shinfa meditation, which is very simple, but we start practicing it to find the center, to find the energy in a place we call Dantian. Dantian is the lower abdomen area. It's not a place where the heart moves. In the Heart Track, in the Wujigong course, we have a course entirely dedicated to that, through many different levels to progress deeper and deeper into it. Today we just use a few minutes to start using something practical, some technique that we can go home and use with it. Even if we didn't learn for a long time, we have a place to start practicing. So the Shinfa meditation talks about breathing and the heart movement. It talks about when my heart moves and wants or doesn't want, I start breathing. I feel I'm missing oxygen, then I breathe in, and then I have enough oxygen, then I relax and I breathe out, I breathe in and I breathe out. This is the regular movement on the heart, of the heart, that we normally don't think of, but we do it automatically. We don't think of it. But at the end of this breathing in, because I don't have oxygen, and then I feel, oh great, I breathe out, there's a small spot of time, a small dot of time, where we don't breathe in again. It's just a fraction of a second, and we normally ignore it. It's like that fish at the bottom of the pond. We don't even know that it's there. But that place we call the connection to the Dantian, the connection to the place that we're in the womb. We were in the womb. My belly was connected with the umbilical cord to my mother, and through her to the prior generations, to nature itself. This is what we call the pre-heaven, or the inside of the Dantian, the lower abdomen area, and not so much in the chest and the heart where the lungs is, the heart. So in this Shinfa meditation, which is very simple, we breathe in and we breathe out, and at the end, instead of ignoring that fish at the bottom of the pond, I just dwell in it for a second or two. I don't breathe in right away, and I become aware of that space, that fixed space, that I don't either breathe in or breathe out, breathe in or breathe out. Many other practices, other meditative practices often talks about breathing, concentrate about the breathing in and out, which involves the heart movement. The heart moves with it, and with the time, with the years, I become aware of the heart movement. At the end, I will also start to find that place which is fixed, which is not the heart movement. But here, just like what Lu Jiuyuan tried to point out, we go a little faster. We make a shortcut. Instead of doing many years of learning about the heart movement with the breath, we're just finding that spot at the end, which is a fixed space. And that fixed space, normally we are not aware of it at all. It's just a little dot. But as we practice it, we breathe in, we breathe out, and at the end, when I finish breathing out, I just dwell in it for a second or two or three. Gradually, I start to develop awareness of that fixed space, and it becomes a little longer, maybe 3-4 seconds, maybe 4, 5, or 6 seconds. After a long time, it becomes 10 or 15 seconds. In an effortless action. In other words, the more I calm my heart, like when I go to sleep. I breathe in, and I breathe out, and then I don't breathe in right away. If you look at people that sleep, they have a pause. Nothing happens with the breath until again, and there's a pause. This pause is being connected to the source, we call it, or connecting to Dantian. And this is what we do in Shinfa meditation. I breathe in, I breathe out. I don't concentrate of anything, but I reflect inwards into my Dantian area, into the lower abdomen. I try to listen to Dantian. My eyes or my vision look into Dantian. My thought all go back into Dantian, and I'm dwelling in this space, in the fixed space. This is what in the Great Learning it says that reaching or knowing about the stopping point reaches to true knowledge, or reaching to this stopping space, to this fixed space. Knowing this is called true knowledge. Knowing that spot, it's called 知知. Knowing that stopping spot is what we have a fixed space, is when we have a fixed space. And then in the ancient classes that talk about different levels of becoming calm, of being at peace, and so forth. And this we will all go through these levels when we do the heart track. But right now, we want to at least find that spot and make a space out of it instead of a dot. We breathe in, and we breathe out. We just hold in there for 1, 2, or 3 seconds. This allows my heart to calm down. The heart movement starts to become smaller and smaller, including if the boss makes me miserable, if anybody else starts to rubbing me the wrong way. This is something that we can do anywhere at any time. Just breathe in, breathe out. The focus of the exercise is not the breath. It's not the breathing in and out. But rather at the end of the breath out, I just dwell there, inside Dantian, inside the lower abdomen area. I stop thinking outside, hearing outside, looking outside. It's all inside my Dantian. 1, 2, 3, 4 seconds. And then I breathe in again. It's very comfortable. I don't feel any suffocation or any irritation. I'm just relaxing. And when I relax, just like at sleep at night, I don't need to huff and puff or breathe very fast. I breathe in, I breathe out, and I'm just dwelling in Dantian, reflecting into Dantian. So this is the method. We can practice it a few times a day, at any place, at any times. At least twice a day, in the morning and in the evening. When we wake up, a few minutes, 5 minutes. When we go to sleep, before we go to bed for 5 minutes, this will change the entire course of the day. Just like I explained with the patient story that I just mentioned. You reflect inward, you go into Dantian, you let the heart calm down, and you start seeing how many different things in a very mysterious way start to align back into the proper place. This is our Shinfa meditation that we can all practice by ourselves. We can just do it a few times together. Just stay in Dantian. Breathe in, breathe out, stay in Dantian. Close your eyes, don't listen outside. Your thoughts are all in Dantian. Breathe in. Breathe out. Perfect. So this practice you can keep by yourself. Today I want to start wrapping up the class. I bring a picture I found from about 100 years ago of the Goose Lake Temple. This is the earliest picture I can find. Of course, 900 years ago when the debate took place between Lu Yuan and Jushi, there were no cameras. There are some drawings and painting from earlier on. But this is a picture of that place where hundreds of people gathered to discuss or to debate if true principle, true understanding of life comes enlightenment from the inside or by researching outside I can find about my heart. This debate that continued for centuries. I'm circling back into here from the beginning of the class where I just introduced this debate. From my experience, from my practice, Lu Yuan and Liu Yuan from the Huaishan school researching this light that comes from the inside, the proper measure, the common center, is something that helps students progress really, really fast and reach to very, very far places. Just like the patient that I mentioned, in a very short period of time, the tables are turning. And this could be also for health issues, for disease, for getting pregnant, for other things, not just on relationships levels like with the boss at work or with family member that I fight with. On many other things, including disease. So I want to circle back into that place, that debate. Should we do the things from the outside to find the truth, or should we start looking inside and start by preserving stillness, just like the Shinfa meditation that I explained before? And then also going to goodness literature to start work out the heart to be deeper and deeper, more and more proper. In that debate between the two, where there were hundreds of people present, from reports that I read, Lu Yuan, the one that says the light comes from the inside, we find it inside, all the sages are alike, the Buddha, Confucius, everybody are alike, the light inside is the same. My heart is the universe. All the reports of the people that I read is that that person, Lu Yuan, in that 3 days of fierce debate, had very much so the upper hand. Everybody left feeling that he was right. He had the upper hand. At the end, all the government institutions picked up on Jushi and elevated him to become a sage, adopted his style of researching outside as the orthodoxy and the institutionalized kind of learning about the person and about the heart. So all the scholars later on all followed in his footsteps as being the sage. But really in that debate, everybody present at that time felt, except the followers of Jushi, of course, but everybody else, all the scholars, objective scholars from the sidelines who came to view it, says that Lu Yuan had the upper hand in explaining to people how this truth is inside, how finding this truth is inside. It's not by looking outside. It's not by this scientific evidence that we're looking for outside. It's by finding inside. Sometimes when I tell patients, look, if you know if to take this drug or to do this surgery, you have to reflect inside to find out, is it right for me or not? Sometimes it surprises people. It's like nobody ever says that. What do you mean reflect? I'm not a doctor. You should ask someone else. They'll decide. Someone from the outside can decide for me. I don't know if it's good or bad. But in our method, in our school, what we're learning here in the Heart Track is very different. We learn to find inside the answers. We learn to find out if doing a certain surgery is right. If doing a certain, after we accumulate the information that we need, what is the surgery, what is the drugs, what it is for. Let's say I don't know, so I need to learn what it is. Then I look inside. Is it right? Is it wrong? I find the answer inside, not on the outside. Not by scientific evidence, not by statistics, what people tell me. These things from the outside often don't pan out that great, with results not that optimal. So this is a Goose Lake Temple, at least 100 years ago, image of it. Liu Yuan, I want to bring from him here as we conclude the class. He says, maybe not everyone may reach to the level of immortals or attain Buddhahood through the practice of stillness nurturing, like that kind of thing that we're learning. Maybe some people have really special skill and they attain like really phenomenal level of knowing what's going beyond time and space. Maybe not everybody can do that. But he says, to health, they will reach with no doubt. In other words, finding this insight to these things that we're calling health and longevity, that for us is super important. For this, he says, people reach to that with no doubt. Maybe we're not all can get to a very, very high phenomenal level that we can see things beyond the normal. Maybe not everybody can do it. But just to get to health and longevity, everybody will reach for that for sure. And this is something to consider very, very seriously. He says, when sick, one uses true nature practice, this kind of practice that we're talking about. Today we just introduced Shinfa meditation, the first step. But these kind of practicing of stillness, preservation, finding inside that truth. He says, when sick, one uses this true nature practice. The method is of nurturing true qi in dantian, just like I started explaining today class. And then healing unfolds. Stillness nurturing, this kind of going inwards, is not limited to sitting cross-legged, like in lotus sit meditation kind of a thing. But rather, he says, whenever there is free time, close your eyes, and it is good nurturing. Just like I explained before. It's not like I need to take half an hour and go somewhere and sit in meditation. I don't have time to meditate. Actually, you can do it everywhere, every time, anytime. You sit, you close your eyes, you breathe out. You don't do any weird postures. You don't sit in a cross lotus seat and people look at you. What are you doing? You just sit anywhere in a restaurant. You went to eat lunch in the middle of work. You close your eyes. You breathe out in a few seconds in dantian. You just do it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes. Meaning every time just 2, 3 seconds holding the breath, but practice it few times for a minute or two, not just for 2 seconds. Practice it over and over again for a few minutes. You can do it everywhere. It says, whenever there is free time, close your eyes, and it is good nurture. And this is our secret here for starting even in the introductory class. We can all do it everywhere, wherever we are. We don't even have to go very deep or learn. Of course, if we do want to go healthier, longevity, and find about ourselves more and more, this is why I'm unfolding this heart track that I'm introducing here in this class. I want to conclude the class just by sharing with you where I'm sitting right now. Is in a tree house that I built myself in the past few months. Just recently I finished building it. And you can see the images here, starting from just the frame building, and I all just building it with my both hands and a screwdriver and a hammer and a few nails. But you can see this is where I'm sitting here today in the nestled in the middle of the woods. I put even a little fireplace behind me. I hope you're enjoying the fire. But part of us learning about the heart and about ourselves is to first build a structure. The structure, I'm not talking about the tree house here, but rather building a frame of work. And this is what we're doing in the heart track. All the classes I hope to deliver here from this nestled in the forest, in the middle of the forest of Northeast United States, to the rest of the world, whoever watches me, wherever you are. But we are using the different 12 courses in the heart track to build a structure by doing meditative techniques or stillness preservation techniques and learning different kinds of goodness literature to start to build a structure that I can work in, that I can live in. And that this will involve many different aspects. Here, right under the computer, I have a little table, and underneath it I unfolded a nice carpet. Maybe you can see it here at the bottom picture. There's a nice little carpet there. But this unfolding of the Hunyuan Heart Track, all the different courses in building this structure, by comparison or by analogy, will be like unfolding a huge carpet covering here the entire forest. There are so many things there to explore. It's not like a little carpet. It's a very, very big carpet covering a very, very wide area of a structure, allowing us to cultivate in different ways towards improving our relationship, improving our health, improving our longevity, improving people's around us health and longevity. This is the scope of this carpet we're unfolding with the Hunyuan track. So this is about the class that I wanted to share with you to introduce the Hunyuan Heart Track. I hope that you enjoyed it and maybe learned a few things, or at least the practical aspect of the Shinfa meditation. I hope that you can start using it in order to reach some benefit for yourself and people around you. So thank you for sharing the platform with me and watching this video. If you are interested to join, you should go to the Hunyuan Academy website, which is hunyuanacademy.com. It's also on the first slide of this presentation, and I hope to see you there in January 2018 or later. Okay, goodbye everybody.